lights of Christmas burn brighter every year, yet the human heart grows dimmer. We buy more, wrap more, give more, and feel less. In our hands are boxes filled with gold, but in our souls an ache that no glitter can hide. We have learned to give everything except ourselves. The world has perfected the performance of generosity, but forgotten its spirit. We call it a season of giving. Yet much of what we give has little to do with love, and much to do with image, guilt, habit, or fear. And so, beneath the beauty of the holiday, there lingers a quiet curse. The curse of giving without grace, of sharing without sincerity, of wrapping emptiness in paper and calling it joy. The first of these cursed gifts is pride. Pride is the gift that demands to be seen. It dresses itself in generosity, but only to be admired. It gives not to bless, but to impress. It is the hand that gives while glancing around to make sure others are watching. Pride offers gifts that sparkle on the outside, but rot within, because its motive is not love, but validation. And pride's curse is subtle. It makes every act of goodness serve the self. It teaches the heart to turn even compassion into currency, and the more it is praised, the more it hungers. The soul that gives for applause can never rest, because applause fades faster than wrapping paper. Then there is the gift of debt, the kind of giving that wounds while pretending to heal. How often we buy what we cannot afford to prove affection that cannot be priced. We measure love by the receipt, as if devotion were a transaction. But debt poisons the act of giving, turning gratitude into guilt and celebration into comparison. It enslaves both giver and receiver. The giver drowns in anxiety, the receiver feels unworthy or indebted. What was meant to unite becomes a quiet chain between hearts. The truth is that love never needed proof. It only needed presence. When giving becomes a competition, the spirit of Christmas dies behind the glare of luxury. The third cursed gift is control. It is the gift that manipulates the subtle whisper, "Now you owe me." We offer kindness with invisible strings, disguising desire for dominance as generosity. Parents, lovers, friends, all sometimes fall into this enchantment, to buy loyalty instead of building trust. But control is not love. It is fear wearing a mask of affection. The moment a gift becomes leverage, it ceases to be holy. Even heaven gives without condition. Control transforms giving into ownership and turns relationships into contracts. A controlled love is not love at all. It is merely possession, polished to look divine. The fourth cursed gift is resentment, given from duty rather than desire. It is the gift that says, "I will, but I wish I didn't have to." It hides bitterness beneath ribbons, obligation beneath smiles. It gives not out of abundance, but out of fatigue. And resentment poisons both giver and receiver, because every act of reluctant charity whispers, "You owe me joy for the burden of my goodness." True giving is never born from guilt. It blooms from gratitude. To give while resenting is to offer poison in a chalice of gold. The curse of resentment is that it empties the act of its spirit. The gesture remains, but the grace is gone. Then comes neglect, the fifth cursed gift. It is the gift of absence, the curse of being there but not present. How often we buy to replace being, to fill silence with noise, to cover distance with things. We offer toys instead of time, money instead of attention, convenience instead of care. Neglect is the curse of an age too busy to love deeply. It hides behind busyness and calls it sacrifice. But no child ever needed more gifts than affection. No friend ever needed more words than presence. The heart does not hunger for things. It hungers for being seen. The greatest poverty is not lack of wealth, it is lack of witness. The sixth cursed gift is hypocrisy. It gives for reputation, not redemption. It smiles for cameras and donates for headlines. It turns virtue into advertisement and service into self-promotion. Hypocrisy poisons the sacred because it uses goodness as theater. It convinces the soul that image is integrity, that applause is absolution. But the curse of hypocrisy is emptiness. It devours meaning from within. The world no longer believes in goodness because goodness has been commercialized. The heart that gives for spectacle does not give, it sells. And every time we trade sincerity for visibility, another light of truth goes out. The seventh and final cursed gift is indifference, the refusal to give at all. It hides behind cynicism, excuses, and exhaustion. It says, people don't deserve it, or it won't make a difference. But apathy is the darkest magic. It freezes compassion into ice. Indifference is the quiet undoing of humanity, the slow erosion of empathy. It is the gift that drains the soul dry, until generosity becomes myth and mercy becomes inconvenience. A heart that stops giving soon stops feeling. And the moment we stop feeling, the image of God within us fades. Yet every curse hides a mirror. Each of these 7 gifts reveals not evil itself, but the shadow of a forgotten truth. Pride shows us our need for humility. Debt teaches us the emptiness of comparison. Control reveals the hunger for trust. Resentment reminds us that real love cannot be forced. Neglect cries out for presence. Hypocrisy exposes our thirst for authenticity. And indifference exposes our fear of being hurt again. If we can look into those shadows without fear, we will find the path back to the light of true abundance. True giving begins when the ego dies. It is not about what leaves your hands, but what leaves your heart. The truest gift is not an object, but a transfer of spirit, the courage to love without measure, to forgive without condition, to give without keeping score. When giving is stripped of pride and control, it becomes something divine. It no longer flows from wealth, but from wholeness. It is not generosity born of guilt, but gratitude born of grace. And so, perhaps the 8th and hidden gift is not something we offer, but something we become. The heart transformed by humility becomes the gift itself. The spirit purified of greed becomes the altar. The life devoted to compassion becomes the miracle. The curse breaks not through rituals, but through awareness, through remembering that to give in love is to touch eternity. For the hands that are empty of pride are the hands that can finally hold heaven. And when you reach that place, when your giving flows from joy rather than judgment, you will see the world differently. The smallest act of kindness will feel like prayer. The briefest smile will carry the weight of a sermon. The simplest gesture will heal more than gold ever could. You will understand that wealth was never the problem. It was the worship of it that cursed us. Money is a tool. Love is the purpose. Possessions are temporary. Presence is eternal. The wise do not reject abundance, they redeem it. They use it as light, not as leverage. So, as the season of giving returns, remember this. It is not the price of the gift, but the purity of the spirit that determines its power. Give with humility, and your offering will bless. Give with pride, and it will curse. Give with love, and even your silence will sing. For in the end, every soul must choose what kind of giver it will be, the one who buys affection or the one who becomes it. And when the wrapping tears and the music fades, may the only thing left in your hands be the light that cannot be bought, the gift of a heart renewed by grace. And when the morning after Christmas arrives, when the paper lies torn and the boxes empty, something begins to stir inside the quiet. The glitter that once gleamed so brightly now looks like dust in daylight, and in that small silence a truth begins to whisper, that all the things we give, all the treasures we chase, all the gestures we make to feel alive, none of them can fill the space that only meaning was meant to occupy. For meaning is not purchased, it is revealed. It reveals itself in how we love, how we forgive, how we endure. It reveals itself in our willingness to give without audience, to serve without praise, to care without proof. That is where true wealth begins, not in the vault or the wallet, but in the widening of the soul. To think about wealth rightly is not to reject it, but to purify it, to rescue it from the smallness of self. Money itself carries no sin. It is only the mirror that magnifies whatever already lives inside us. In the hands of the vain, it multiplies vanity. In the heart of the fearful, it builds walls. But in the spirit of the generous, it becomes light. The danger is not in wealth, but in forgetting what it is for. Wealth was meant to flow, not stagnate to build, not to boast, to uplift, not to enslave. When we forget that, our riches begin to own us. Every soul must therefore confront this question. What kind of wealth am I creating? The wealth of possessions or the wealth of purpose? One decays, the other multiplies. One is spent, the other spreads. The truest abundance is the kind that makes others richer too, not in gold, but in dignity, in comfort, in courage. When you lift another, you multiply your own value in ways no currency can measure. The gift that blesses the world always returns, doubled to the giver, not through transaction, but through transformation. And so the heart learns to give again, not out of habit, not out of duty, but out of revelation. You realize that the whole world is starving, not for things, but for meaning, not for attention, but for love. Every angry face hides a wound. Every greedy act conceals a fear. People clutch to money because they have forgotten how to trust grace. They cling to possessions because they fear scarcity, not realizing that abundance was never about how much one has, but how freely one gives. To live as though wealth was spiritual is to see life as sacred economy. Every thought, an investment, every word, a seed, every act of kindness, a dividend of eternity. When you give joy, you do not lose it, you compound it. When you share peace, you do not divide it, you multiply it. The mathematics of heaven runs opposite to the logic of the world. The more you pour out, the fuller you become. The more you release, the lighter you rise. And so we begin to understand the great reversal that sits at the center of all wisdom. That the richest life is the simplest one. That the fullest heart is the one most emptied of pride. There is no curse stronger than greed, and no blessing greater than gratitude. Gratitude turns ordinary days into miracles and common moments into holy ground. It turns the act of living into worship. It transforms even suffering into a form of sight, because when you suffer with grace, you see what cannot be seen in comfort. You see that all things, even lost, can become gifts when received with faith. There is a hidden law written into the fabric of existence. What you hold too tightly decays. What you give freely endures. Power hoarded becomes oppression. Power shared becomes peace. Love confined becomes control. Love released becomes creation. The soul, too, follows this law. The more you guard it, the smaller it becomes. The more you open it, the more infinite it feels. To live generously is not merely to act kindly, it is to align yourself with the rhythm of the divine. For the universe itself is an act of giving. The sun gives light, the earth gives fruit, the river gives motion, the breath gives life. The human heart, made in that image, finds peace only when it too becomes a giver. And when it does, the curses fall away. Pride dissolves into humility. Debt transforms into gratitude. Control melts into trust. Resentment softens into compassion. Neglect gives way to presence. Hypocrisy bows before truth. Indifference awakens into love. These are not miracles of theology, they are miracles of awareness. They happen the moment the soul remembers what it was created for, not to accumulate, but to adore, not to conquer, but to contribute. And if you could see yourself as heaven sees you, you would stop measuring your worth by your possessions. You would stop fearing loss, because you would realize that nothing good is ever truly lost. It only changes form. Love becomes memory. Memory becomes wisdom. Wisdom becomes strength. And strength becomes light. That is the alchemy of the soul, turning all that is temporary into testimony. So, when the world tempts you to measure success by the height of your towers or the weight of your gold, remember this: a single act of love outweighs them all. The richest empire fades into dust, but one heart awakened to compassion endures forever. Greatness is not in having, but in becoming more human, more open, more whole. And if you live like that, wealth will no longer be something you own. It will be something you are. You will walk through the world as a blessing, disguised as a person, lifting others simply by existing. Your presence will calm storms you never see. Your words will plant seeds you may never harvest. And your life, however ordinary it appears, will echo with the quiet majesty of one who has understood what Christmas really means, that to give is to be alive, and to love is to be free. That is the unspoken truth behind every gift, every candle, every carol. It was never about what we placed under the tree. It was always about what we were willing to lay down our ego, our fear, our self-centered dreams. The greatest gift ever given was not wrapped in paper, but in humility. And every time a human being chooses love over pride, faith over fear, giving over grasping, that miracle happens again. And in that moment, Christmas is reborn, not in the calendar, but in the human heart. And when all the songs have faded into the walls and the last candle breathes its final glow, may your heart stay awake. For the miracle of Christmas was never a day on the calendar, but a doorway, one that opens whenever a soul remembers that love is still stronger than fear. The world will continue to glitter and to hunger, but you have seen the truth, that the greatest wealth is invisible, that the most precious gift is the one you give in silence, that the most powerful life is lived from the inside out. So go quietly into the ordinary days ahead, into your work, your relationships, your choices, and carry what you have seen here. Let your generosity become a rebellion against despair. Let your faith become a light that no market can sell. And when the world grows cold again, let your kindness be its fire. For every time you choose love over pride, gratitude over greed, truth over comfort, and giving over grasping, Bethlehem burns again in the human heart. The curse of this world breaks not through thunder, but through tenderness. And someday, when history itself grows tired and the stars begin to dim, it will be that same tenderness, that soft, unassuming light, that will remain shining quietly, eternally within you.